Hi everyone! Welcome to my drama live. Hi everyone! Kumusta po kayong lahat? How are you guys? Hope you're all okay.
Heto ang pera. Anong ibig mong sabihin?
Okay, welcome to my
8,000
drama
na
live.
inabot mo noon, gagawin kong 10,000. Simula ngayon, ako na ang magpapatakbo nitong karinderya. Kunin mo ang pera at umalis ka na. Huwag kang makialam. Oras ng tanghalian.
Pili-pili na kayo dyan ng kung anong
gusto
sagot
niyang
nyo.
makipaghiwalay ng negosyo sa akin. Huwag ka namang magsalita ng ganyan kasakit. Hindi kita dinadaya sa pera. Dinaya mo man o hindi. Alam mo sa sarili mo. Kuya G, mali naman yata yan. Sumikat itong pwesto natin. Dahil yan sa galing magluto ng master ko. Hindi dahil sa libro ng kwenta mo. Ito rin ba ang gusto mong
Which
sabihin?
couple
Chang'an,
is
dapat
the
magkaroon ka naman ng
happiest?
konsensya. Ako ang
Your
gumigising ng
choice
alas 3 ng madaling
reveals
araw para magluto.
your
Ako ang
true
napapasok ang braso.
personality.
Kapag nagrereklamo ang mga trabahador na maalat o matabang, ako rin ang napapagalitan. O ano ngayon, kaya dapat ako ang masunod sa pwestong to. CJ, edi magkaliwanagan na tayo. Tinatakot mo na naman ako gamit yung libro mo. Pagkain ang kinakain ng mga trabahador, hindi libro ng utang. Yung construction site number 2. Nung unang araw na pinapasok tayo, sino ba ang naghintay sa project office ng 3 araw? Yung team sa tower crane, yung meal ticket ng mga taga-bakal at karpintero. Sino ba ang nakiusap para makuha ang mga yan isa-isa? Kakausap lang. Mas nakakapagod pa ba yan kaysa magluto ng 8 kawan ng ulam? Yung 320 order kaninang umaga. Sino ang nag-abono para sa mga sangkap? Inutang kay Ate Zao. Baboy, itlog at gulay. Kaninong pangalan ang nakapirma? Yung pagkain para sa alas 11 ng gabi na shift. Sa aling gate pwedeng pumasok? Aling hukay ang hindi pwedeng daanan? Saang parte ng daan ang maputik at kailangang likuan? Sino ba ang pabalik-balik na nag-asikaso niyan? Sinasabi mo ang mga yan, para lang maungusan ako. Inungusan ba kita? Brother Jai, diretsuhin mo na. Kunin ang pera, iwan ang pwesto. Mula ngayon, may sarili ka ng landas. Kami ang magbebenta ng aming pagkain. Pera, kukunin ko, pero ang daan. Kayo na ang bahala dyan. Huwag kayong tumunganga lang dyan. Mula ngayon, ganito pa rin ang lasa ng packed lunch. Tatanggap pa rin ng meal ticket gaya ng dati. Sinong nagsabing gaya pa rin ng dati? Foreman Lou. Ako pa rin naman ang nagluto ng pagkain. At hindi rin naman kumunti. Kayo sa crane team, makakakain pa rin kayo. Ang kailangan namin ay mainit na pagkain sa tamang oras. Hindi ang pagmumukha mo, hantay shit. Noong nakaraang buwan nung malakas ang ulan, gumuho ang lupa sa may gate ng construction site. Yung pagkain sa night shift, sino ang umikot sa west gate para maihatid? Ang rebar team, biglang nagdagdag ng 40 order. Sino ang unang nag-abono? Hindi ba't lahat yan ay para sa pwesto? Para sa pwesto. Kung ganoon, ihatid mo ngayon ang para sa night shift. 160 order. Doon sa ilalim ng crane sa building 3. At pipirmahan ko.
Mega love shout out.
Ang nangyayari
11
ngayon ay
million
problema lang
in
sa
the
paghihiwalay
house.
namin. Hindi nito maantala ang pagkain ninyo. Kung maantala o hindi ikaw ang magpapasya dyan. Ang mga natitirang ticket ng crane team para sa buwang ito, nag-cancel na. Hindi nakakain ang grupo ng tower crane. Kung ganoon, tingnan na lang muna natin sa grupo ng bar. Baka mamaya, hindi ma-deliver ang pagkain tapos malugi pa tayo sa ticket. Foreman Lou, sinasabotahe mo ba ako? Anong sinasabotahe ko? Kaming mga manggagawa, buhay ang tinataya namin sa trabaho. Hindi pwedeng isugal ang pagkain. Anong sinasabotahe ko? Kaming mga manggagawa, buhay ang tinataya namin sa trabaho. Hindi pwedeng isugal ang pagkain. Nag-cancel na si Foreman Lou, kaya kaming mga taga-rebar. Magka-cancel na rin muna kami para sa 2 araw. Pati na rin ang grupo ng mga karpintero. Hindi muna kami order ng hapunan. Anong ibig niyong sabihin? Luto na ang pagkain. Basta na lang kayo magka-cancel. Kayo kanina, nung pinaalis niyo yung tao. Hindi ba't basta niyo na lang din ginawa? Mga kasama, kumalma lang kayo. Yung bayad sa tanghalian ngayon, kung kailangang isauli, isasauli ko. Tuloy pa rin ang hapunan. Hindi maantala. Bless you. Porket sinabi mong hindi maantala, hindi na talaga maantala. Master, magka-cancel ka talaga. Chang'an. Sandali. Tungkol kay Foreman Lou, pakisabi sa kanya para sa akin. Masyadong biglaan ang nangyari kanina. Huwag mong hayaang magkaroon ng di pagkakaunawaan sa mga manggagawa. Kanina noong pinapaalis mo ako, hindi ka naman natakot na baka hindi nila maintindihan. Han Taisheng, tinuruan kitang magluto ng 300 serving ng sinangag. Kung paano kontrolin ang apoy, tinuruan din kita na ang pinaka-importante sa pagkain sa construction site ay hindi ang lasa. Kung gayon, ano? Sakto sa oras. Malinis. Nagbabayad ng utang. Nung sandaling pinalayas mo ako. Itong 3 bagay na ito, wala ka man lang natupad ni isa. Zhao, sa gabi, tulad pa rin ba ng dati? Baboy, 20 kilo. Itlog, 6 na tray. Gulay, 3 basket. Si Ji Chang'an. Mula ngayon, ako na ang magpapatakbo ng pwesto. Hindi na siya ang bahala. Kung ganoon, cash basis na. Di ba dati, kinukuha muna ang gulay. Tapos sabay-sabay babayaran sa katapusan. Dati kasi, ang pumipirma ay si Ji Chang'an. Andito pa naman ang pwesto ko. Nagbebenta pa rin ako ng pagkain. Wala akong pakialam kung andyan pa yung pwesto mo. Ang pinapautang ko ay yung tao. Hindi yung mga kaldero mo. Madam, huwag niyo siyang pakiusapan. Hindi lang naman siya ang nag-iisa sa palengke. CJ, sige, subukan ninyo. Tingnan natin kung sino ang papayag magpautang sa inyo. Ng gulay para sa mahigit 100 order. Hoy, magkano itong patatas? Mura lang, 80 sentimos 1 kilo. May mga tama lang sa gilid. Balatan mo lang, pwede pa namang kainin. Hindi pwedeng puro patatas ang pagkain para sa night shift. Lagyan mo na lang ng giniling, ayos na yan. Maghapon nagtatrabaho ang mga manggagawa. Sino pa ba ang mamimili niyan isa-isa? Maghapon nagtatrabaho ang mga manggagawa. Sino pa ba ang mamimili niyan isa-isa? Sabi dati ni Ji Chang'an, yung pagkain para sa night shift, hindi pwedeng tipirin. Madam, wala na si Ji Chang'an. Sinusunod mo pa rin lahat ng sinasabi niya. Gusto mo ba o hindi? Kung ayaw mo, magsasara na ako. Nagpapanggap. $160 serving. Bawasan mo ng 2 sandok ng gulay. Tama na. Nag-cancel na ng order ang team ni Ludaching sa Tower Crane. Porket sinabi niyang cancel, cancel na agad. I deliver mamayang gabi ang hapunan. Sa tingin mo ba talaga hindi siya kakain? Hello. Yung pagkain ni Han Taisheng para sa night shift sa Building 3 ngayong gabi. I deliver sa ilalim ng Tower Crane bago mag-alas 6:50. Kapag na-late kahit 1 minuto, hindi ko pipirmahan. Foreman Lu. Masyadong gipit sa oras. Dati, alas 6:30 pa lang, nandito na si Ji Chang'an. Ano na kinatatakot mo, Tay? Iilan lang naman ang daan. Kaya rin nating deliver yan. Isarang mabuti ang takip ng mga baunan. Huwag itapon ang sabaw. Itulak mo muna palabas yung tricycle. O sige na, pwede na yan. Anong pwede na yan? Kapag na-late ang pagkain para sa night shift, hindi talaga pipirma si Ludache. Na natakot lang yun. Kapag gutom na ang mga trabahador, sa tingin mo ba hindi sila kakain? Ano nang sabi dati ni Ji Chang'an? Hindi dapat tumagas ang sabaw sa loob ng kahon. Kapag tumagas, maghahalo-halo ang amoy ng lahat ng nasa ilalim. Tay, kanino ka ba talagang panig ngayon? Tara na. Nagde-deliver ng pagkain. Nasaan ang pass? Araw-araw kami nagde-deliver. Anong pass pa ang kailangan? Ang pangalan sa temporary meal delivery pass ay Ji Chang'an. Sino sa inyong dalawa si Ji Chang'an?
Ji Chang'an. Ji Chang'an.
Mali ang tao. Mali rin ang plaka. Bawal pumasok. Sa loob, naghihintay na ang pagkain ng night shift sa Building 3. Kung ganon, kumuha ka ng pass sa project department. Isang hamak na gwardiya. Inaantala mo ang pagkain ng mga trabahador. Kaya mo bang panagutan yan? Isang hamak na gwardiya. Inaantala mo ang pagkain ng mga trabahador. Kaya mo bang panagutan yan? Sumigaw ka pa ng isa. Walang gate na papasukan mo ngayong gabi. Pwede ba sa West Gate? Hindi sarado ang daanan sa West Gate. Kayo na ang umikot. Ay, naku, lagot. Bakit ang bilis mong magpatakbo? Aabot ba tayo kung hindi ako bibilis? Hindi ba't sabi mo kaya mong deliver? Tawagan na kaya natin si Ji Chang'an. Tanungin natin kung saang daan talaga papunta sa Building 3. Huwag. Lalamig na ang pagkain. Kahit lumamig pa, hindi ako tatawag. Alas 7:22. Na-traffic sa daan. Mainit pa naman ang pagkain. Bakit may putik to? Hindi ko pipirmahan. Foreman Lou. Naghihintay na ang mga kasama natin. Pagkain ang hinihintay nila, hindi sama ng loob. Sino ang nagsabi sa inyong dumaan sa West Side para makapasok? Nasaan ang form para sa ruta ng delivery nyo? Bukas ng umaga, pumunta kayo sa project department para magrehistro ulit. Kapag hindi malinaw ang rehistro nyo, huwag na kayong pumasok dito. Mura lang. Cash lang, kunin mo na. Damihan mo ng sili pag niluto. Ang bango niyan. Hindi sariwa itong karne. Boss, ang daming tiket na binalik kahapon. Hindi naman nagpapautang ang palengke. Gusto mo pa bang makabili ng magandang karne? Hindi mo pwedeng lokohin ang mga taga-construction site. Nag-iinarte ka pa ngayon. Anong ipangluluto natin mamayang tanghali? Iluto mo yung mukha mo.
Niluto mo yung mukha mo.
Bawasan mo ang timbang. Huwag kang mag-alala. Pag naluto na sino pang makakapansin. Patatas na may karne. Sapat naman ang dami.
Paano pag walang mukha?
Kainin mo habang mainit. O eto sa'yo. Bakit parang may amoy itong karne? Ganyan talaga pagluto sa malaking kaldero. Matapang lang ang lasa ng sauce. Maasim ito. Yung baunan ko rin. Pati ulam kumonti. Kahapon 2 sandok pa. Ngayon 1 kalahating sandok na lang. Huwag kayong mag-ingay. Mainit ang panahon. Malasa lang ang pagkain. Hindi yan pwedeng masira. Ikaw ang kumain yan. Kainin mo. Pipirmahan ko ang pagkain para sa araw na ito. Sino ang bumili ng karne? Ako ang bumili. Nasaan ang resibo ng pinamili? Ako ang bumili. Nasaan ang resibo ng pinamili? Binili ko lang sa maliit na pwesto. Walang resibo. Nasaan ang sample box? Noong nandito pa si Ji Chang'an, bawat meal, nag-iiwan ng sample. Nakaipit ang resibo sa likod ng mga meal ticket. Unang araw niyo pa lang sa pwesto. Wala na lahat. Yung pagkain ngayong araw, itigil muna ang pagpirma. Magpaliwanag ka sa project department mamayang hapon. Go and Kwan, gusto mo bang sirain ang negosyo namin? Kapag may nalason sa mga manggagawa, yan ang totoong paninira. Yung bayad sa pagkain kaninang umaga, alam kong hindi mo tatakbuhan ang bayad. Ang mga utang ko, babayaran ko. Chang'an, narinig mo ba? Gumamit daw ng murang karne si Han Taisheng ngayon. Nagkakagulo sa construction site. Pagkain niya yan kaya panagutan niya. Talaga bang pababayaan mo na lang? Noong umalis ako, nilinaw ko na ang lahat. May sumakit ang tiyan sa construction site number 2. Hinahanap ng project department kung sino ang supplier. Gaano ba kalala? Subukan mo kayang kumain ng isang kahon. Hindi rin naman sigurado kung sa pagkain yan. Sa construction site, kahit pag-inom ng malamig na tubig ay nakakasakit ng tiyan. Ulitin mo nga ang sinabi mo. Tower crane team, steel bar team, carpentry team. Simula ngayon, ititigil muna ang pag-order ng pagkain. Kuya Go, bigyan mo ako ng 1 araw. Papalitan ko ang ulam. Ulitin ko ang luto. Ang tiyan ng mga trabahador. Hindi pwedeng maging experiment ang mga tao sa pagkakamali mo. Isauli mo muna ang pera. Isauli mo ang bayad ng 3 team. Bukas, kahit pambili ng gulay wala na tayong pera. Kasalanan to lahat ni Ji Chang'an. Noong umalis siya, lahat sila sinisiraan na tayo. Sino nang bumili ng karne? Sinong nagsabi na yung patatas? Pwede nang gamitin kapag binalatan. Di ba dahil yon sa wala tayong pera? Hindi ba't kinuha mo lahat ng pera? At ibinigay kay Ji Chang'an? Master, hindi ito ang oras para pag-awayan yan. Hanapin mo si Ji Chang'an. Hilingin mo sa kanya na kausapin si Ludachen. Hindi ba't hinihintay ka lang niyang sumuko? Magpakumbaba ka na. Iligtas mo muna ang negosyo. Chang'an, nagkaroon lang ng konting hindi pagkakaunawaan sa construction site kanina. Hindi pagkakaunawaan. O gumamit kayo ng karneng walang resibo. Alam mo na pala, mabilis kumalat ang balita sa palengke. Ludachen, pakiusapan mo naman siya para sa akin. Kahit isang salita lang. Sabihin mo lang na huwag muna nilang i-cancel ang meal ticket. Gusto mo akong umalis? Iwan ang pangalan. Han Taisheng, inagaw mo ang pwesto sa pagkain. Nagka-problema, tapos gusto mo pang ako ang managot para sa'yo. Wala rin akong magawa. May magagawa ka. Kaya lang sa bawat paraan, kailangan mong panagutan. Abiso ng pagwawasto. Bago magtanghali bukas, kumpletuhin ang ruta ng pagde-deliver ng pagkain. Listahan ng mga pinamili, talaan ng mga sample, pirma ng garantor. Kapag may kulang ng isa, paalisin sa pwesto. Pirma ng garantor. Ang dating garantor ay si Ji Chang'an. Umatras na siya, kaya kailangan niyong maghanap ulit. At isa pa, yung bayad sa pagkain ngayon hindi pipirmahan ng project department, kayo na mismo ang maningil sa mga trabahador. Listahan ng ruta at listahan ng pinamili. Kinumpleto ko na lahat. Walang tatak ng tindahan ang listahan ng pinamili. Hindi nakasulat sa listahan ng ruta. Ang daanan para sa night shift. Talaan ng mga sample. Kaninang umaga lang ito sinimulan. Kaka-take over lang namin. Paano namin makukumpleto lahat agad-agad? Ang pagkain ng mga trabahador. Hindi rin pwedeng maghintay habang natututo pa kayo. Maghahanap pa ako ng garantor. Bago mag-alas 12 ng tanghali. Kapag hindi ka nakahanap, paalisin ang tindahan ng pagkain. Foreman Lu, may bigat ang salita mo dito sa construction site. Tulungan mo akong pumirma bilang garantor. Anong igagaranti? Igaranti na walang magiging problema sa pagkain namin mamaya. Kahit ikaw mismo hindi mo kayang panagutan. Tapos ako ang pananagutin mo. Ano nang gagarantiyahan mo? Gagarantiyahan na hindi na magkakaproblema ang pagkain namin sa susunod. Ni sarili mo nga hindi mo kayang panindigan. Tapos ako ang pag-aako mo. Foreman Lu, lahat naman tayo nandito para kumita ng pera. Hindi naman kailangan gipitin ang tao ng todo-todo, di ba? Yung mga trabahador na sumakit ang tiyan kahapon, nasa medical tent pa rin hanggang ngayon. Sino ang nanggigipit kanino? Bayaran mo muna yung refund. Saka tayo mag-usap tungkol sa tiwala. Hindi pa bayad yung kahapon. Tapos gusto mo pang kumuha ng pagkain ngayon. Mamayang hapon pa babalik yung pera para sa refund. Isasabay ko na lang sa'yo. Paano mo iyan masisiguro? Ngayon nga halos hindi ka na makapasok sa construction site. Naniniwala ako sa'yo. Ilang basket lang ng sirang gulay. Ano ang pinag-aawayan nyo? Kung sirang pagkain, wag mong kunin. Sirang pagkain. Tumabi ka nga. Umalis ka dyan. Madam, huwag na tayong mag-abang sa site number 2. Magbaba tayo ng presyo. Punta tayo sa gate 1, magbenta sa mga individual na trabahador. Basta 2 piso ang bawas kada meal, siguradong may bibili niyan. Madam, huwag na tayong mag-abang sa site number 2. Magbaba tayo ng presyo. Punta tayo sa gate 1, magbenta sa mga individual na trabahador. Basta 2 piso ang bawas kada meal, siguradong may bibili niyan. Isakay na sa sasakyan. Bawal humarang sa gate ang mga pansamantalang pwesto. Ilang mil lang naman ang ibebenta namin. Bawal magbenta kung hindi rehistrado. Madam Jai, hinihintay ka ni Foreman Lu sa loob. Bakit siya pwedeng pumasok? Rehistrado siya. May ruta siya. May taong tatanggap. Gate 1, magdagdag muna ng 80,000. Pang-alis pagod. Sa tiket po ang bayad. Pag may kulang sa akin ibawas. Sige, yan ang panghahawakan ko. ₱5 isa. Mas mura ng ₱2 kaysa sa loob. O kakain ba kayo? Bawal magbenta ng pagkain sa may gate. Kapag nakaharang kayo sa daan at may nadisgrasya, sino nang mananagot? Hindi kami papasok. Dito lang kami sa labas magbebenta. Bawal din sa labas. Kakaanunsyo lang ng project office. Ang mga food stall na hindi rehistrado. Kailangan 50 metro ang layo mula sa gate. Umalis na muna kayo. Aalis saan kami pupunta. Naluto na ang pagkain. Paalisin lahat. Ang kainan sa site number 2. Kailangan wala na kayo dyan bago mag-alas 6 ng hapon. Bakit naman? Kami ang nagtayo ng kainan na iyan. Nasa lupa ng project yung kainan. Dati kay Ji Chang'an yan inaprubahan. Yung permit para magbenta ng pagkain. Ngayon umayaw na siya. Hindi pa kumpleto ang mga papeles nyo. Hindi pa naaayos yung mga reklamo. Hindi niyo na pwedeng gamitin yan. Nagpasa na ako ng form kahapon. Hindi porket nagpasa ka ng form ay aprobado na. Walang resibo ang mga paninda. Palaging kulang ang food sample nyo. May utang pa kayo sa refund ng mga tiket. Paano ko to ipapaliwanag sa mga boss? Isa pa, sa mga thermal box at lamis at upuan. May ilan dyan na nakapangalan kay Ji Chang'an. Kung hindi sa inyo, huwag niyong galawin. Sa mga thermal box at lamis at upuan. May ilan dyan na nakapangalan kay Ji Chang'an. Kung hindi sa inyo, huwag niyong galawin. Nakasulat sa kahon na to ang pangalan ni Ji Chang'an. Matagal nang ginagamit dito ang kahon na yan. Sa atin yan. Ibaba mo. Master Han, akin na ang bayad sa gulay kahapon. Bukas na lang. Tinanggal na ang pwesto mo sa kainan. Saan kita hahanapin bukas? Kunin mo muna to. Ilan na lang ang natira? Hindi pa to sapat pambayad sa isang basket ng gulay. Itong batch ng gulay para bukas. Ititira kita ng mga sariwa. Ang bayad ay arawan tulad ng sinabi mo. Ang utang ko, binabayaran ko sa parehong araw. Master, nakita mo ba? 220 order para sa night shift sa Building 3. Ang order na iyon ay dapat sa atin. Pambayad sa bigas, gas at gulay. Walang sapat para sa kahit ano. ₱5. Kahit puhunan hindi mababawi. Bawiin muna natin ang mga customer. Nagbebenta si Ji Chang'an ng ₱7. Magbenta tayo ng ₱5. Hindi naman tanga ang mga trabahador. Gusto mo pa rin gawin sa lumang paraan. Dati may mga meal ticket. May pautang. Ngayon, anong mayroon tayo? Dagdagan mo ang sinaing. Bawasan mo ang mantika sa ulam. Ayan, tama yan. ₱5 talaga. ₱5 talaga. Punuin mo lang ang kanin. May lasang karne din ang ulam. Nasaan ang karne? Nasa sabaw lahat ng lasa ng karne. Masarap ihalo sa kanin. Master, tingnan mo. Talagang mabisa kapag mura. Hilaw itong kanin. Papalitan ko itong box. Bakit papalitan? Nagalaw na niya eh. Hindi pwedeng palitan kapag hilaw. Sino ang nagpahintulot sa inyong magtinda rito? 50 metro na lang ang layo natin sa gate. Daanan ito ng mga truck ng materyales. Nagkukumpulan kayong mga tao. Paano dadaan ang mga truck? Kahapon lang nilinis ang lugar na to. Ngayon naman, inaharangan niyo ang daanan ng materyales. Hindi naman kami pumasok sa construction site. Dito lang kami sa labas nagbebenta ng kaning ulam. Kahit kaning ulam pa yan, hindi pwedeng humarang sa daan. Lalo na't hindi pwedeng hayaan ang mga trabahador na kumain ng nakakalat sa daanan. Bakit si Ji Chang-an pwedeng magbenta sa loob? Tapos kami sa labas, bawal. Mayroon siyang pwesto. Wala kayo. Sa ngayon, bibigyan ko muna kayo ng babala. Sa susunod na maulit to, huwag na kayong umasang makakapagparehistro para sa delivery. Anong sinusulat mo? Burahin mo yan. Anong buburahin? Kilala ng mga trabahador ang pangalan ni Ji Chang-an. Hihiramin lang natin para makabenta ng ilang araw. Palitan na lang natin kapag nakabawi na tayo sa puhunan. Nakakasira ito ng pangalan. Mas mahalaga ba ang reputasyon ngayon? O ang perang pambili ng pagkain? Nagbukas na naman ba ng pangalawang pwesto si Master Jai? Masyadong maraming tao, kaya hindi niya kayang asikasuhin lahat. Kaya pinapwesto niya kami dito sa labas para tumulong. Parang iba ang lasa nito ah. Magkaiba kasi kapag malaki at maliit na kaldero ang gamit. Pero iisang luto lang yan. May mga label lahat ng lunchbox ni Master Jai. Bakit itong sa inyo walang ganyan? Take out na kanin ulam lang to. Para saan pa ang label? Sino nagsabi sa'yong gamitin ang pangalan na yan? Hindi naman nakasulat ang pangalan niya sa deal mo. Ganyan din ba ang tingin mo? Kapag may kumain itong pagkain, at tinanong kung si Ji Chang-an ba ang gumawa, hindi. Kung ganoon, huwag mong gamitin ang pangalan niya. Nanghihiram ng pangalan para magbenta ng pagkain. Isinulat lang para madaling makilala. Wala akong ibang ibig sabihin. Kung may malason sa mga trabahador, kaninong kasalanan? Kaninong responsibilidad ang mga pinirmahan? Kaninong kasalanan ang mga reklamo? Kailangan mong habulin to. Itatala ko para sa'yo. Basta linawin mo lang ang pagkakasulat. Kung sino ang nagbenta ng pagkain, siya ang managot. Bukas ng umaga, sa finance office ng project site, ayusin niyo ang kwentahan niyo bago at pagkatapos niyong maghiwalay. Sa susunod, ang utang ng isa, huwag isisi sa iba. Yung mga resibong pinirmahan bago kayo maghiwalay. May pirma ni Ji Chang-an. Pagkatapos niyong maghiwalay, yung mga refund, reklamo, at mga packed lunch. Lahat yan ay mula kay Han Taisheng. Dati naman, nagkasosyo tayo sa pwesto. Bakit ngayong hiwalay na, sa amin lahat ipinapasa? Noong ibinigay mo sa akin ang pera, hindi naman yan ang sinabi mo. Simula sa resibong to, umalis na si Ji Chang-an. Kung sino ang nagluto ng mga sumunod na pagkain, siya ang managot. Sa Tower Crane Team, may refund na 360. Itinigil muna ng Steel Bar Team ang pag-order. Ni-refund ang 800 paunang bayad. Nagreklamo ang Carpentry Team, kaya may bawas na 240. Dalawang trabahador mula sa klinik, inabunuhan muna ang gamot na 120. Ang dami naman. Hindi pa kasama dyan yung multa sa pagharang sa daanan ng materyales. Pati yung multa kasama. Nakasulat sa abiso. Kapag inulit pa, may multa na. Pumirma kayo dyan. Yung pinirmahan kong bayarin sa gulay, bayad na kahapon. Yung pinirmahan mo, dapat bayaran mo na rin. Pati ang bayad sa gulay at lunchbox, dapat na rin bayaran. Sabi mo kahapon, ngayon ka magbabayad. Huwag mo namang ipagpabukas ulit. May 2 tangke pa ng gasol. Hindi mo pa na ibibigay yung deposito para sa mga basyong tangke. Ano nang pinag-aawayan nyo? Magkano ba ang utang sa inyo? Babayaran naman, Wala ka ng pwesto. Anong ipambabayad mo? Hoy, huwag kang umagaw. Maliit lang din ang negosyo namin. Sinong sasalo sa atin? Master, ito si Zhou Sanhai. Nagpapautang siya para sa puhunan. Hiramin mo muna ang 3,000 para maisalba ang pwesto. Paano ang tubo? Kakilala ang nag-refer. Hindi malaki. Sa 10 araw, may dagdag na 300. Ang taas naman. Lagpasan muna natin to. Basta maagaw lang natin ang isang batch ng order. Babalik din agad ang pera. Pipirma ka o hindi? Kung hindi ka pipirma, aalis na ako. Building 3, night shift, 220 order. Pinili ko para sa'yo yung mga sariwang gulay. Arawan ang bayad. Kapag kumulang ng 1 kusing, wag mo kong titirhan ng gulay bukas. Biglang nagdagdag ng 30 order para ngayong gabi. Bago pa rin mag-alas 6:30. Kaya, ang pipirmahan ay para sa 250 order. Master, 250 order. Makuha lang natin to, makakabawi na tayo. Building 3, sa ilalim ng tower crane, alas 6:30. Huwag kang magkakamali ng lagay. Alam ko, alam ko. Hayaan mo pa ng 10 minuto. Wala ng oras. Kailangan ni Ji-Chang ang dumating ng alas 6:30. Dapat alas 6:20 nandoon na tayo. Siguradong sa atin kukuha si Ludacek. Hindi naman siya sa atin umorder ng pagkain. Gutom na ang mga trabahador. Kung sino nang unang dumating, doon sila kakain. Empake na. Dahan-dahan. May nabalahaw na sasakyan sa daan na to dati. Kapag bumagal tayo, hindi natin makukuha. Gusto mo bang humanga? Ara. Itapon mo na tong kahon, ay deliver mo muna yung natitira. Andito na ang pagkain. 250 order. Kainin niyo muna yung sa amin. Sino nang nag-order sa inyo? Pinadala kami ni Ji Chang'an bilang kapalit. ₱250 order. Building 3, night shift. Buksan mo. Sabi ko buksan mo. Han Taisheng, nagde-deliver ka ba ng pagkain o ng perwisyo? Nahulog tong kahon na to sa daan. Okay lang yung iba. Kung okay lang, bakit ka umiiwas? Walang gagalaw sa batch na to ng pagkain. Ang takaw talaga ni Foreman Lu. Itapon mo yung ilang box sa ibabaw. Mainit pa yung mga nasa ilalim. Kaya mo bang ipakain yan mismo sa mga trabahador? Guan-kuan, kinumpis ka mo ang pagkain namin. Sino ang magbabayad sa lugi? Nilabag nyo ang rules at minadali ang delivery. Ginamit nyo ang order ng iba. At nag-deliver pa kayo ng pagkaing may putik sa mga trabahador. Kayo ang sasalo sa lugi. Hindi namin ginamit ang order ng iba. Kakasabi lang ng apprentice niya. Si Ji Chang'an daw ang nagpapadala sa kanila ng kapalit. Magpaliwanag kayo sa Project Department Office bukas ng umaga. Bawal ibenta ang batch na to ng pagkain ngayong gabi. Bawal isauli para ibentang muli. Kaya yung mahigit 200 order, lugi na lahat. Mas mabuti nang malugi kayo kaysa mapahamak ang tiyan ng mga trabahador. ₱250 order. Walang kulang ni isa, nasa likod yung lalagyan ng sabaw. Unahin yung bigyan yung mga trabahador na galing sa taas. Master, sinadya niya yun para pagtawanan tayo. Yung sinabi kanina na pinadala kami ni Ji Chang'an. Sinong nagsabi noon? Bawal kumuha ng order sa loob ng 7 araw. Mula sa mga team ng project department. Sa mga team sa loob ng construction site, wala akong pakialam kung paano kayo magbenta sa labas. Pero hanggat pumapasok kayo sa proyektong to, hindi aprobahan sa loob ng 7 araw. 7 araw, anong kakainin natin? Ako ang tinatanong mo. At saka yung pagkain kagabi na nasayang. Hindi pwedeng isisi sa project department ang pagkalugi. Kayo na ang bahala dyan. Kahit pambili ng gas ay kulang. Narinig ko sinuspinde raw kayo ng project department ng 7 araw. 10 araw para magbayad. Hindi pa naman due. 10 araw ay 10 araw. Pero kailangan kong makita kung may kakayahan ka pa bang magbayad. Maganda tong kaldero. Hindi pwedeng galawin ang kaldero. Eh di maglabas ka ng pera. Kuya Hai, bigyan mo kami ng 2 araw. May kukunin kaming malaking racket. Makakabayad kami kaagad. Malaking racket. Ni hindi nga kayo makapasok ngayon. Pwede mong kunin yung tricycle. Huwag lang yung kaldero. Kapag kinuha yung tricycle, paano natin ay de-deliver yung pagkain? Pag nawala yung kaldero, hindi na tayo makakapagluto. Isang muna ang bowl. Bago magtanghali bukas, magdala ka ng 500. Kung hindi, babalikan ko yung kaldero. Buhatin nyo na. Tumaas ang presyo ng gulay ngayon. Ibibigay ko na lang sa'yo sa presyo kaninang umaga. Kung kailangang taasan, taasan mo. Huwag mo akong abunuhan. Madali kang kanegosyo. Bumalik na rin ang mga karpintero. Sabi nila basta ikaw ang magde-deliver. Ilista na lang daw tulad ng dati. Sa ngayon, kalahati muna ang ibalik natin. Kulang tayo sa tao, hindi natin pwedeng pilitin. Dahil lang sa sinabi mo niyan, kaya naglakas loob silang kumain. Master, may trabaho na. Ang head ng cleaning team. 200 order para bukas ng tanghali. Cash. Kain muna ng 3 araw. Sa katapusan ng buwan ang bayad. Mura kasi sa inyo kaya ako pumunta. Hindi kami nagpapautang. Boss, kapag natapos natin tong order, magkakaroon na tayo ng kita. Hindi kami tumatanggap ngayon. Bukas, Miyerkules, darating si Kuya Hai para kunin ang mga kaldero. 4.5 bawat serving. Dapat mailasang karne at nakakabusog. Gagawin o hindi, isang salita lang. CJ, 200 serving sa katapusan ng buwan ang bayad.
Sige.
4.5 tapos gusto mo pa mailasang karne. At kailangan pang nakakabusog. Paano ka ba nakipag-usap? Ang gusto nila, mura. Kapag mura, marami ang order. Sa katapusan ng buwan ang bayad, habang mas marami ang order, mas malaki ang utang. Kung hindi mo gagawin, hintayin mo na lang si Kuya Hai sa Miyerkules na kunin ang mga kaldero. Pumili ka. Dati, mababa ang tingin ko sa ganitong pagkain. Dati kasi, nandyan si Ji Chang'an para saluhin ka. Nakakabusog ba? Nasaan ang karne? Yung giniling, nakahalo na sa gulay. Kailangan mo pa palang hanapin yung lasang karne. Sabi ko may lasang karne. Hindi yung sabaw lang ng repolyo ang ipapakain mo para makalusot. Sa 4.5, gusto mo pang kumain ng braised pork. Eh di huwag mong sabihin nakakabusog. Nakain na. Ano pa ang isa sa uli? Hilaw ang kanin. Walang mantika ang gulay. Ito ba ang tinatawag mong nakakabusog? Anong ginagawa mo? Anong ginagawa nyo? Bayaran nyo na lang ng kalahati ang pagkain para sa araw na to. Yung natitira, saka na natin pag-usapan kapag maayos na ang luto nyo bukas. Ang usapan sa katapusan ng buwan ang bayaran. Nagbago na ang isip ko. Tatakbuhan mo ba kami? Niloloko nyo nga ako sa pagkain eh. Bakit hindi pwedeng baguhin ang usapan? Kapalan nyo bukas. Pipirmahan na nila yon. Kapalan mo. Saan naman ako kukuha ng pera? 500 din yon. Isang araw pa. Sinabi ko na wala akong pera ngayon. Bukas kukunin na namin ang kaldero. Pera, ito lang lahat. Kulang. Kuya Hai, may order pa kami sa clearing team ngayon. Kinaltasan na nga kayo ng kalahati kahapon. Tapos lulukohin niyo pa ako sa bukas na yan. Kunin niyo. Kunin niyo na ang kaldero. Wala na talaga akong pag-asa. Nung panahon na nangutang ka, ang kapalaran mo ay nakasulat na sa pinirmahan mong kasunduan. Anong tinutunganga mo dyan? Magsalita ka naman. Master, hayaan na lang kaya muna nating kunin nila. Pwede naman tayong umarkila ng maliit na kaldero para makapagluto. Anong sinabi mo? Mas mabuti na yon kaysa araw-araw silang nasa pinto natin. Kalahati lang ang katumbas ng kaldero. Yung natitira sa loob ng 3 araw. Zhao, kukuha ako ng gulay, babayaran ko mamayang gabi. Hindi naman sa wala kang galing. Wala ka lang talagang isang salita. Kapag pinautang kita, parang ako na rin ang napahama. Dati naman nakakautang si Ji Chang'an. Nakakautang siya dahil ilan ang tiket at pagkain niya sa araw na yon. Alam ko kung anong oras ay deliver at anong oras ang bayaran. Libre 2. Bumalik ka muna at pakalmahin mo ang mga tao. Huwag ka nang basta-basta tumanggap ng order. Saan ka nagpunta? Naghanap ng trabaho. Anong laman ng bag? Pati yung trabaho sa clearing team na wala mo rin. Mas mabuti nang huwag kunin yung mga ganyang klaseng order. Naghanap ako ng ibang trabaho. Bukas tutulong ako magluto sa pwesto sa West City. Boss, hindi nakakayanin ang pwesto mo. Hindi ako pwedeng sumama sa'yo sa pagkalugi. Kahit lugaw lang kailangan maibenta. Dati packed lunch. Ngayon nagbebenta na ng lugaw. Mainit. Isang mangkok lang sapat na. Anong silbi naman itong inumin? Han Tai-sheng. Huwag kang magpwesto sa gilid ng daanan ng materyales. Nagtitinda lang ako ng lugaw. Hindi naman nakaharang sa daan. Ilipat mo sa ilalim ng puno. Para wala nang mangyaring masama. Ngayong araw nadagdagan na naman ng isang team ng plastering. Kaya mo bang kunin bukas? Ngayong araw nadagdagan na naman ng isang team ng plastering. Kaya mo bang kunin bukas? Bukas 50 serving lang ang kaya kong idagdag. Kapag lumagpas pa dyan, hindi ko nakakayanin sa oras ng kainan. Hindi kasakim sa dami ng order. Kaya panatag ang loob ng mga trabahador. Magkano ang lugaw? 2. Huwag na lang. Dagdagan mo na lang para makakain ka ng kanin. Ito lang ang naibenta ko maghapon. 3 araw na ang lumipas. Yung kaldero pambayad na sa kalahati. Yung natitirang utang linawin mo ngayong gabi. Babayaran ko ng paunti-unti. Ayoko nang mabagal. Kariton. Itulak na paalis. Hindi pwedeng galawin ang kariton. Kung gayon, magbayad ka ngayong gabi. Kapag kinuha tong kariton, hindi na ako makakapagbenta ng lugaw bukas. Pera ang utang mo. Hindi awa. Bigyan mo pa ako ng 2 araw. Ipinahiram ko na sa iyo ang kaldero ng 1 araw. Ipinahiram ko na rin ang kahon ng 1 araw. Ang kariton, gusto mo iwan ko pa rin sa iyo. Manghan, huwag mo namang sirain ang natitira mong kahihiyan. Manghan, oras na para bayaran ang upa sa pwesto. Palugit pa ng 2 araw. Pangatlong beses ko nang narinig yan sa'yo. Lalabas ako para magbenta ng lugaw ngayon. Magbabayad ako pagkatapos. Bago maggabi bukas, kung hindi ka magbabayad ng upa, alisin mo na ang mga gamit mo. Hindi ba't gamit pa niya ang kariton kahapon? Narinig ko kinuha na raw ang kariton niya. Mainit na lugaw. 2 piso 1 mangkok. Sir, busy ako doon sa pwesto ko. Mauna na ako. Aalis ka na lang ng ganyan. Kailangan ko ring kumain. Walang ni isang reklamo ngayong araw. Sabi ng mga karpintero gusto na nilang bumalik sa dating dami ng order bukas. Yung buong order sa makalawa na natin pag-usapan. Bukas, magdagdag muna tayo ng 50 order para masigurado sa oras ng kainan. Han Taisheng, nasaan ang kariton? Chang'an, pahiram ako ng isang sasakyan. Hindi ko hihiramin ng libre. 20 piso sa 1 araw. Pwede ba? Anong panlaban mo? Yung pinagsamahan natin, hindi pa katumbas ng isang lumang sasakyan. Nung nilustay mo ang pera sa inkubator na iyan, bayad na ang lahat ng utang na loob natin. Gusto mo ba talagang mamatay ako? Hindi kita tinulak. Ikaw mismo ang humila sa sarili mo pababa. Master, anong ginagawa mo rito? Sabi mo naghahanap ka ng trabaho. Yun pala nagbabalot ka lang ng pagkain para sa iba. 25 ang bayad dito sa 1 araw. At libre pa ang pagkain. Nung panahong baon ako sa utang, bakit hindi mo sinabing libre pala pagkain? Anong pinag-aawayan nyo? Hindi ito lugar para magkamustahan kayong magmaster. Boss Liu, pahiram ng sasakyan kahit 1 araw lang. Magde-deliver ako ng 2 beses para pambayad. Sa reputasyon mo ngayon, sino nang magtitiwalang ipahiram ang sasakyan sa'yo? Master, huwag mo kong sisihin. Suko na talaga ako. Ikaw ang nakaisip niyan. Ikaw ang naglagay ng pangalan. Ikaw ang kumuha ng mga order. Tapos ngayon, hindi mo na kaya. Kung magaling ka talaga, hindi ka malalamangan ng isang salita lang ni Ji Chang'an. Sa huli, hanggang pagluluto ka lang naman. Kung wala si Ji Chang'an, ni hindi mo alam kung saan ka magsisimula. Layas. Wala na yung sasakyan. Magtitinda ka pa rin ng lugaw. Ganito na lang, may alam akong racket para sa'yo. Bukas sa palengke sa umaga, may isang pansamantalang tolda. Kailangan nila ng gagawa ng 200 almusal. Cash agad. Pero kailangan mong magluto sa hating gabi. Cash agad. Pagkatapos mo ibibigay ko. Kunin mo ang pera at bayaran mo ako. Para hindi na kita kailangang hanapin araw-araw. Saan? Sa palengke sa may norte. Magbubukas ng 4:00. Huwag kang mahuhuli. $200 serving. Alas 4:20 na. Bakit ang tagal mo? Malayo ang bayahe. Nasira ang sasakyan. $200 serving. Ito lang ang dala mo. Paano to sa sapat? Nasa likod ng tinapay may atsara rin. Inutusan kitang magluto ng almusal. Hindi para lokohin ang mga tao gamit ang tira-tira. Hindi ba't 200 serving ang usapan? Ilang mangkok lang naman to. Paano ito kakainin? Babalik ako para magluto pa ng isa pang batch. Huwag na. Ang trabaho mo ngayon, babayaran lang para sa 30 serving. Ang trabaho mo ngayon, babayaran lang para sa 30 serving. Ang usapan ay cash para sa 200 serving. Kaya mo bang magbigay ng 200 serving? Manghan, binibigyan kita ng trabaho, hindi para ipahiya mo ako. Alam mong wala akong kaldero at sasakyan. Tapos kumuha ka pa rin para sa akin ng 200 serving. Ang alam ko lang ay may utang ka. Akin na. Ito na ang lahat ng pera ko para sa araw na ito. Pambayad mo rin naman yan sa akin. Alisin mo yan. Huwag ka nang kukuha ng trabaho sa palengke simula ngayon. Pagkain sa construction site ng Chang'an. Ito ang lugar kung saan mukhang magtatagal ako. Laging magtabi sa bawat hain. Itabi ng 48 oras. Kapag may taong nagkaproblema sa pagkain, suriin niyo muna ako. Ilatag ang mga patakaran para madaling maaprubahan ng project department sa susunod. Ang mga patakaran ay hindi para sa iba. Para ito sa pagdidisiplina sa sarili. Mang G, gusto raw magdagdag ng 100 order ng Building 3 ngayon. Hindi na pwede ngayon. Hanggang 50 lang. Ang iba ay para bukas na. May kita na sana, aayawan pa. Kapag hindi natin kinaya, malilate tayo sa oras ng kainan. Isang beses na malate, hindi niya na ako pagkakatiwalaan. Makinig kayo sa kanya. Kung ilan ang sabihin niya, yun na iyon. Kung ganoon, 50 na lang. Hindi ba't siya yung dating nang aagaw ng pwesto? Si Manghan. Narinig ko, wala na raw pati kariton niya. Ji Chang'an. Matagal mo nang inihanda itong lugar. Tiningnan ko ito noong gabing naghiwalay tayo. Inagaw niyo ang klase ng kainan. Kailangan kong masigurong may makakain ang mga trabahador bukas. Ang daan ay hindi nakukuha sa salita lang. Pinaghihirapan ito ng paunti-unti. Ang upa sa pwesto. Wala akong kinita ngayon. Bigyan mo pa ako ng isang araw. Hindi naman sa hindi kita napagbigyan. Itong pwesto mo, sinisira ng usok ng mantika ang pader. May utang ka pa sa tubig. Araw-araw akong nirereklamo ng kapitbahay. Aasikasuhin ko. Umalis ka na ngayong gabi. Nariyan pa ang mga gamit ko. Magpapalit ako ng lock bukas ng umaga. Wala namang gaanong halaga ito. Hindi ito sa'yo. Hindi mo pa nababayaran ang utang mo sa akin. Huwag kang gumawa ng gulo rito. Umalis ka na lang ng tuluyan ngayong gabi. May private dinner bukas ng gabi para sa mga kontratista. Kulang na kusinero. Kung pupunta ka, yung sahod mo, pambayad mo na sa akin.
The man in the alley catches Nell's attention the moment she turns the corner. Unshaven and in tattered clothes, he sits on the pavement, completely drenched from the rain. No umbrella, no shelter, just cardboard beneath him that has long since turned to mush in the
Excuse me
downpour.
po.
Nell's heart gives that familiar pang of sympathy. This morning is a cold, gray wash of misery that seems to seep into her bones. But she is already 15 minutes late for her job interview at Morrison & Associates, clutching her worn portfolio against her chest. She can't afford to be late, not when her rent is already 3 weeks overdue and her landlord has started leaving increasingly threatening voicemails. So she has to hurry along, except something about the man makes her pause. Most people in his situation would be hunched over, trying to make themselves smaller, invisible. This man sits as if he owns the alley. Even sitting on wet pavement in the pouring rain, there is something almost regal about his posture. His spine is straight, shoulders squared with a dignity that seems completely at odds with his circumstances. And when he looks up and their eyes meet, Nell's breath catches in her throat. His gaze is unsettling, not threatening, but aware. Too proud for someone who should have been broken by whatever circumstances have landed him here. Mostly, though, they are the most unusual shade of amber she has ever seen. It makes her stumble. Her foot catches an uneven stone, and suddenly she is falling forward, her portfolio flying from her grasp. The contents of her purse scatter across the wet pavement. Her wallet, the carefully wrapped sandwich that is supposed to be her lunch, her ancient Walkman, every pen she owns. Not again, she whispers, scrambling on her hands and knees to collect everything before it is ruined or blown away. That's when she sees the strange man's hands moving alongside hers. Nell tenses, expecting him to pocket the money. She wouldn't even blame him if he did. But instead, he gathers her scattered belongings with careful precision, holding everything out to her with a gentleness that takes her completely off guard. "I believe these are yours," he says in a deep voice. He doesn't ask for anything in return. He just settles back against the wall with that same inexplicable composure. "Thank you," Nell manages, accepting her things with hands that tremble slightly. The money in her hand represents her bus fare home, the small buffer that might let her eat dinner tonight if the interview goes as badly as she expects. And yet, without letting herself think too hard about it, she presses the crumpled bills into his palm. "For you," she says softly. "Get yourself something warm to eat." The way he looks at her then makes her chest tight with an emotion she can't identify, as if she has just done something extraordinary instead of simply human. "Thank you," he says quietly. Nell nods and is about to hurry away, to rush toward what might be her last chance at financial stability. But then she notices the dark stain spreading across the wet pavement where the man is sitting. Blood. She stops, her heart hammering as she looks closer. How had she missed it before? The man may be composed, but now she sees what the rain and shadows had hidden. His jacket hangs open slightly, revealing a dark, wet patch along his ribs where blood seeps through his torn shirt. "You're hurt," she exclaims. The man glances down at his side as if surprised to find it bleeding. "It's nothing," he says. He's too pale, Nell thinks, and his lips have taken on a bluish tinge that has nothing to do with the cold rain. Nell tries a gentle smile, hoping to encourage him. What's yours? He starts, then stops. His amber eyes meet hers, and for the first time since she's seen him, he looks truly lost. I can't remember, he murmurs. The rain continues to fall between them as those words hang in the air. Chapter 1. You can't remember? Nell repeats, staring at him in confusion. What does that even mean? His name? The last few days? She wants to ask more, but something in his expression, lost and almost fragile, stops her from pushing. Maybe it's shock from blood loss, or trauma from whatever gave him that wound. Either way, standing here interrogating an injured man in the pouring rain isn't helping anyone. It's okay, she says gently.
Okay.
We can figure that out later. He looks at her extended hand for another long moment before slowly reaching out to take it. His fingers are cold despite the earlier warmth she'd felt, and she can see the effort it takes for him to pull himself upright. There's a pharmacy just around the corner, she says, leading him out of the alley. I need to get proper supplies to clean that wound. The pharmacist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, immediately springs into action. Deep cut? She asks, pulling items from the shelves. You'll need antiseptic, gauze, medical tape, and these waterproof bandages. Very important to keep it dry once it's cleaned. Infection sets in fast with wounds like that. Nell nods, watching the growing pile of medical supplies. What should he watch for? Redness spreading from the wound? Red streaks? Any unusual smell? The pharmacist rings up the total. That'll be $43. Nell's stomach drops. She opens her wallet, counting the meager bills inside. $18. That's it. She starts, heat flooding her cheeks. I'm sorry, I don't have enough. The pharmacist's expression softens with understanding. Do you have anything at home you could use instead? I have hydrogen peroxide, Nell says quickly, and rubbing alcohol. That'll work, just take the bandages then, $12. Relief floods through her as she hands over the money. Back outside, the nameless man is leaning against the pharmacy wall, his face even paler than before. My apartment's only a few blocks away, she says, clutching the small pharmacy bag. I have everything else we need there, and it's warm and dry. He looks at her with those unsettling amber eyes, and she can see the internal struggle playing across his features. It's okay, she says. You're hurt, and I'm offering help. That's what people do. Something in her tone seems to decide it for him. He nods once, a sharp, grateful gesture. Chapter 2. Nell's apartment building is a tired 3-story structure that's seen better decades, with peeling paint and a front door that sticks in humid weather. As they climb the narrow staircase to the second floor, she's acutely aware of her mysterious companion behind her. The quiet way he moves, how he seems to take in every detail of their surroundings with those unsettling amber eyes. On the landing, they encounter Mr. Hoffman from 1B, standing in his pajamas and slippers. Oh, hello, dear, he says to Nell, blinking owlishly. I need to get milk for my coffee, but I can't remember where I put my keys. Nell's heart sinks. This is the third time this week she's found him like this. Mr. Hoffman, you're not dressed. Let's get you back inside. I'm not. He looks genuinely surprised. The stranger steps forward, gently taking Mr. Hoffman's other arm, helping guide the elderly man back toward his apartment door. Strange, he murmurs, so quietly only Nell can hear. What's strange? She whispers back. The smell. Can't you? He trails off, shaking his head. Never mind. Nell doesn't smell anything unusual, just the typical musty odor of an old building. Once they've settled Mr. Hoffman safely in his apartment, Nell leads her guest down to her own door. Her hands shake slightly as she fumbles with her keys, and suddenly the reality of what she's doing hits her like a physical blow. Her apartment suddenly feels impossibly small. The stranger seems to fill the entire living room just by standing there. This tall, broad-shouldered man with dirt under his fingernails and stubble that could hide any number of scars. What if he's dangerous? What if helping him was the stupidest thing she's ever done? The stranger seems to sense her sudden tension. He stops just inside her doorway, keeping his distance, his hands visible and open at his sides. "I can go," he says quietly, his voice gentle, unthreatening. The way he's giving her an out makes her feel guilty. A dangerous man wouldn't do that, would he? "No," she says, shaking her head firmly. "You're hurt, and there's a storm coming." She opens the door wider, gesturing him inside. Her apartment is small but clean, a living room that doubles as her workspace, a tiny kitchen, and a bedroom barely big enough for her twin bed. "But before I look at that wound," she says, taking in his rain-soaked, dirty clothes that are leaving wet spots on her hardwood floor, "you need to clean up. If I bandage you like this, you'll definitely get an infection." She disappears into her bedroom and returns with an armful of men's clothing, jeans, a sweater, clean underwear, and socks. "These belonged to my ex-boyfriend," she explains. "He left them here when he moved in with our colleague. His loss is your gain, I guess." The stranger takes the clothes with a grateful nod. "Bathroom's through there," she says, pointing. "There's shampoo, soap, clean towels. I even have an unused razor and shaving cream if you want them." While he showers, Nell listens to the sound of running water and trues not to think about the fact that there's a naked stranger in her bathroom. She tries calling Morrison and Associates to reschedule her interview, but the receptionist barely lets her finish explaining before hanging up. Well, that's that job opportunity gone. 20 minutes later, the bathroom door opens with a soft click, and when Nell turns around, her breath catches. Clean-shaven and fresh from the shower, the stranger is stunning, breathtaking in a way that knocks the air from her lungs. How had she not noticed before that he has features like something out of a Renaissance statue? She stares a moment too long, heat creeping up her neck. "Right," she says, voice a little hoarse. "Let's get that cleaned up." The wound is worse than she thought. A deep, clean puncture with bruising around the edges. "This looks like a stab wound," she says, keeping her voice steady as she applies hydrogen peroxide. "When did this happen?" she asks, blotting the blood with a cloth. "A couple hours ago," he replies, voice tight with controlled pain. "Some men were displeased that I'd chosen their spot to wait out the rain. One had a knife. Things escalated quickly." Nell pauses. "They stabbed you over a place to sit?" "When territory is all you have," he says quietly, eyes steady on hers, "no matter how small you defend it." The wound is finally clean. She applies antibiotic ointment, careful and slow. He flinches slightly. "You should really see a doctor." "This will have to do," he says simply. Outside, the storm swells. He glances at the window, then at her. "Stay," she says firmly, smoothing down the last strip of tape. "At least until the storm passes." He studies her, amber eyes unreadable, then nods. "Just until the storm passes," he agrees. As if on cue, thunder rolls overhead like a freight train, and the lights flicker. Chapter 3. That night, Nell lies awake listening to the storm rage outside. Every creak of the old building makes her hyper-aware of the stranger sleeping on her couch. Sure, he looks like a fallen angel, but that doesn't mean he couldn't strangle her in her sleep. She must eventually drift off because she finds herself dreaming of padding to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And instead of the stranger, there's a massive wolf stretched across her couch. The creature is enormous, sleeping peacefully with its head resting on the armrest. Even in sleep, there's something majestic about it, something that seems both wild and strangely familiar. She wonders distantly why she's not afraid of finding a giant wolf in her living room. What a weird dream. The next morning, the storm is still battering the windows when Nell emerges from her bedroom. "Good morning," her guest says, turning to offer her a steaming mug. "I hope you don't mind. I made coffee." "No, that's great," she says, accepting the cup gratefully. "You didn't have to do that." She studies his face in the morning light. Clean-shaven and rested, he looks even more striking than he had the night before. There's something almost aristocratic about the way he holds himself, even in her ex-boyfriend's borrowed clothes. "Are you hungry?" she asks. "I could make breakfast." As she moves around the kitchen, pulling out eggs and bacon, she notices him examining her small bookshelf. Her collection isn't extensive, mostly secondhand paperbacks. "The Brothers Karamazov," he says, touching the spine of one book. Nell pauses, spatula in hand. "Have you read it?" His brow furrows in concentration. "I think so. I remember enjoying it." "So you do remember some things?" Nell observes carefully. The question seems to pain him. "Not really. Nothing beyond waking up alone in an alley about 2 months ago." He says, "I don't know how I got there." "Maybe a head injury?" Nell suggests gently. "I had no injuries when I woke up," he replies. "Just emptiness." He looks back at the book. "This is the first thing that feels a bit familiar to me. I remember particularly liking one of the characters, Dmitri. He was passionate, conflicted, but ultimately redeemable." Nell's heart aches for him. "Then that should be your name," she says impulsively, "until you remember your real one, Dmitri." "Dmitri?" he repeats slowly. "That's acceptable, I suppose." Nell can't help but laugh at his prim expression. Dmitri suddenly goes rigid, his head snapping up like he's heard something. "What's wrong?" Nell asks, turning off the burner. He doesn't answer, instead rising and moving to the center of the room, nostrils flaring slightly as he sniffs the air. "Can't you smell that?" he asks urgently. Nell inhales deeply. "Smell what? The bacon?" "No," he says. "Something's wrong." Before she can respond, he bolts for the door. "What the heck?" Nell mutters, following him into the hallway. She spots from halfway down the stairs, trying to force open a door on the ground floor. "It's locked," she calls down to him. "It leads to the boiler room." Dmitri ignores her, throwing his shoulder against the door. "Stop!" Nell says, hurrying down the stairs. "You need a..." The door gives way with a loud crack, and Dmitri disappears inside. Nell stares at the broken door frame in shock. "What are you doing?" she calls, following him into the basement. "I'm going to get in trouble with my landlord." The basement is dark and cramped, filled with the building's ancient heating system. She can see Dmitri near the boiler, examining something with intense focus. "Seriously, you can't be here." She tries again, starting down the stairs. Stay back, he orders. There's a leak. You can't stay in here. It's dangerous. What? Nell lets him drag her back up the stairs. What kind of leak? Carbon monoxide, Dimitri says, pulling her toward the building's exit. We need to call 911 now. Okay, I have a phone upstairs. No, it's not safe. He's already dragging her outside into the storm, rain immediately soaking through their clothes. The nearest cafe is half a block away, but Dimitri seems to know exactly where he's going. Emergency, he tells the barista tersely. We need to use your phone. 20 minutes later, Nell watches from across the street as firefighters stream into her building. The fire chief confirms a significant gas leak in the basement, and carbon monoxide has been seeping into the building for weeks. Don't know how you figured it out, one of them tells Dimitri. Carbon monoxide has no smell. Dimitri looks like he's about to disagree when Nell's landlord, Mr. Kep, arrives looking harried and annoyed. What's all this about? He demands, glaring at Nell. Did you cause this mess? There's a gas leak, Nell explains. It could have killed people. The ventilation system just needs a good kick. Kep mutters, then catches himself. I mean, you're all overreacting. Dimitri steps forward. You knew? His voice is cold, precise. You knew there was a problem with the ventilation and you did nothing? Kep takes a step back. Now see here, you have a responsibility to maintain safe living conditions. Dimitri continues, his tone sharp. The lack of proper gas detection and ventilation maintenance is a clear violation of housing codes. People could have died. Mr. Hoffman has been getting confused and sick, Nell interrupts, the pieces clicking together. That's why he's been so disoriented. He's been slowly poisoning himself. Kep's face goes pale. Look, nobody needs to make this into a big deal. You're going to be hearing from my attorneys, Dimitri says flatly, his voice carrying a threat that makes even Nell shiver. Negligent endangerment, violation of housing codes. Wait, Kep says desperately. Maybe we can work something out. How about 3 free months' rent? You're joking, Dimitri cuts him off, his amber eyes blazing. You endangered lives through criminal negligence. Dimitri, Nell says quietly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Can I talk to you for a minute? She can feel the tension radiating from him, but he allows her to pull him aside. Look, she says in a low voice. I appreciate what you're doing, but nobody here can afford lawyers, certainly not you. Dimitri's mouth opens like he's about to protest, then it closes and he blinks like he's only just remembered that fact. That's not the point, he says eventually. He can't be allowed to get away with this. He's not getting away with it, Nell says firmly. He's offering 3 months free rent for everyone. That's real help right now. Everyone is safe thanks to you. That's what matters. She watches him wrestle with this, sees the moment when his rigid posture starts to relax slightly. The hard edges of his authority soften, and he looks almost vulnerable again. Who are you really, Dimitri? Nell wonders, watching him stare pensively out at the storm. Chapter 4. Later that evening, when the fire department finally gives the all clear, Nell and Dimitri climb the stairs to her apartment in companionable silence. Let me check your wound, Nell says once they're inside. Dimitri nods, settling onto the couch and lifting the borrowed sweater. Nell kneels beside him, her fingers working to carefully peel back the bandage. Then she freezes. That's not possible, she whispers. Where the deep puncture wound had been just the night before, there's now only smooth, unmarked skin. Not even a scar remains. I don't understand, Dmitri says, staring down at his own torso with the same bewilderment she feels. Nell runs her finger lightly over the spot where the wound had been. I was worried about infection, about you needing stitches. She murmurs more to herself than to him. Maybe it wasn't as deep as we thought, Dmitri suggests, but his voice lacks conviction. Maybe, Nell agrees. They stare at each other in the lamplight, sharing a moment of mutual confusion. But the confusion fades, and as the silence stretches between them, Nell becomes acutely aware of how close they are. How she's still kneeling beside him on the couch, her hand resting on his bare chest. Her breath catches when he lifts his hand, his fingers hovering just above her cheek. Then reality crashes back in. I should go. Dmitri pulls his sweater back down, standing abruptly. Go? She repeats. I'm better, he says. You've been more than kind, but I should give you your space back. Nell feels a strange urge to protest, to find reasons why he should stay. But none of them make sense. He's right. He's healed, the crisis is over, and she has no real reason to ask him to stay. Of course, she says instead, forcing a smile. Let me pack you some food. When she returns to the living room, Dmitri is folding his old clothes. Keep those, she says, nodding toward the clothes he's wearing. They fit you better anyway. Are you sure? Trust me, I never want to see them again. The bitterness in her voice surprises them both. Dmitri takes the bag of food, his fingers brushing hers as he does. Thank you, he says quietly, for everything. Your kindness, your home. I don't know how to repay you. It was nothing, Nell assures him. No, Dmitri tells her, and there's something almost fierce in his voice. It wasn't nothing. You helped a stranger when you had every reason not to. You shared your food, your home, your safety. He pauses, troubled. I don't remember who I was before, but I don't think I was kind. I don't think I would have done what you did. And then he's gone, leaving her standing in her suddenly too quiet apartment, staring at the empty couch where he'd slept. Chapter 5. 2 days pass in a blur of ordinary routine that somehow feels completely wrong. Nell goes to job interviews, comes home to her empty apartment, and tries to pretend she doesn't keep glancing at the couch where Dmitri had slept. She tells herself it's ridiculous. She knew him for less than 48 hours. People don't form attachments that quickly to complete strangers. But then the storm hits. It starts as heavy rain around noon, the kind that makes the city's inadequate drainage systems overflow and turns streets into rivers. By evening, it's upgraded to something apocalyptic. Howling winds that rattle her windows, hail the size of golf balls, and rain so heavy she can barely see the building across the street. Nell paces her apartment, checking the weather reports obsessively. All she can think about is Dmitri, somewhere out there in this nightmare weather with nothing but the clothes on his back. By 10 o'clock, she can't stand it anymore. She pulls on her heaviest coat, grabs an umbrella, and ventures out into the storm. The wind nearly knocks her over the moment she steps outside. The streets are almost completely deserted except for the occasional emergency vehicle racing past with sirens wailing. Water rushes down the gutters like rapids, and she has to hold on to building walls to keep from being swept away. She makes it to the alley where she first found him, empty except for debris blown in by the wind. Where would he go? Where could anyone go in this? She's about to give up, soaked to the bone and shivering violently, when she spots a figure huddled in a narrow alcove between two buildings. "Dimitri!" she calls out, fighting to be heard over the wind. He looks up, and even through the rain, she can see his surprise. "Nell?" They share a look across the storm-lashed space between them. "You're still here," she says, gesturing to the area near where she'd first found him. A small smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. "Well, I thought, just in case." The way he says it makes her chest tight. Just in case of what? In case she came looking for him? The possibility that he might have been hoping sends warmth flooding through her despite the cold rain. "Come back with me," she says impulsively. "Please, you can't stay out here in this weather." "Nell, what if there's another gas leak?" She interrupts. "What if I need someone with a super smell to save the building?" Super smell? Dimitri looks like he's fighting another smile. A particularly strong gust of wind sends debris flying past them. His hand comes up to steady her, fingers gentle but firm on her arm. "The storm's getting worse," she says quietly. "I won't be able to sleep knowing you're out here." He looks at her for a long moment, rain dripping from his dark hair. "You don't even know me," he says. "That's not true," she protests, and the admission feels heavier than it should. You're my friend. Come home with me, Dimitri," she says softly, "just until the storm passes." He nods finally, and she feels relief flood through her so strongly it's almost dizzying. "Just until the storm passes," he agrees. Chapter 6. Back in her apartment, they stand dripping in her small entryway. "I should get you a towel," Nell says, acutely aware of how his wet clothes cling to his frame. "That would be good," Dimitri agrees. She bustles around, gathering dry clothes and towels, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickens. You can change," she says, gesturing toward the bedroom. "I'll go get some sleep. You should too, it's late." "Yes," he agrees, but makes no move toward the makeshift bed. "All right." They stand there in her small living room, the weight of unspoken things pressing down on them. "Well," Nell says finally, "good night." She escapes to her bedroom, but sleep is impossible. Not with him on the other side of the wall. Every creak, every shift of the couch, every breath he takes sounds like it's right next to her. After what feels like an hour, she gives up. Barefoot, she creeps to the door and presses her ear against it. Silence. She eases it open and peeks out. The living room is washed in moonlight. Dimitri is sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring out the window. Still, watchful, like he's hunting something in the shadows. "Can't sleep either?" she whispers. He turns his head toward her voice. Even in the dark, his eyes gleam. "No," he says softly. She steps out, suddenly too aware of her thin nightgown and bare legs. The air feels colder, her skin tighter. "I thought maybe I'd make some tea. Chamomile," she says, trying to sound casual. "It helps sometimes." "Help?" he repeats, and there's something darkly amused in his tone. She clears her throat. "Would you like some?" She's already reaching for the kettle when she hears him stand. Footsteps behind her, slow, controlled. Not loud, but present. And when she turns, he is here. She backs up instinctively, the counter pressing into her lower back. He follows, stopping just shy of touching her. "Nell," he murmurs, his voice like smoke, rough and intimate. She wets her lips. His head dips lower, and she feels the brush of his nose against her throat. "I don't want tea," he murmurs, lips grazing her skin. She swallows. "No?" she asks. Her hands fly to his chest, meant to push, but they don't. They curl into his shirt instead, pulling him closer. "You smell like rain and heat," he replies, and something sweeter underneath. "Dimitri," she breathes, her whole body thrumming. "You've been so kind to me," he whispers. "Let me make it up to you." The kiss crashes over them like the storm outside, hungry, reckless, overdue. He kisses her like he's remembering something with his body before his mind can catch up, like her mouth is a secret he's known in another life, and the tea is forgotten entirely. Chapter 7. Nell wakes to the low clink of ceramic and the soft hiss of a stovetop flame. She pads barefoot into the kitchen, the cotton of her nightgown clinging to sleep-warmed skin. Dimitri stands at the stove, barefoot. When he turns to look at her, his amber eyes glow in the morning light, and his slow, lazy smile nearly brings her to her knees. "Morning," he rumbles, voice still thick from sleep. "Morning," she says, suddenly shy. He hands her a mug, fingers brushing hers, and her stomach flutters. A soft, nervous excitement she hasn't felt since she was a teenager. "The storm's over," she murmurs. "So it is," he says, eyes focused on her. "You could stay another day." She hesitates. Just to be safe. The forecast mentioned possible aftershocks. A beat of silence. Then his mouth twitches. "Aftershocks," he echoes, stepping forward with a glint in his eyes. "I see. You're just being responsible." "I am extremely responsible," she replies, chin lifting. "Yes," he agrees, his voice rough as his fingers tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "You are." When he kisses her, it's slow and warm, tasting like coffee and something deeper, something unspoken. Her body leans into him before her mind catches up. "Just one more day," he murmurs against her lips. But one day becomes 2, then a week, then more. They fall into an easy rhythm, except nothing about it is easy. Every brush of skin feels electric. Every look lingers a beat too long. "I am just grateful," he says one afternoon, backing her against the counter, his mouth ghosting her jaw. "You saved my life. Let me show my appreciation." "This is appreciation?" she pants as his fingers tease the edge of her waistband. "Deep, soul-altering gratitude," he confirms solemnly, before kneeling to demonstrate just how grateful he can be. They joke about their arrangement, Nell calling him her kept man, Dimitri insisting he's earning his keep in increasingly creative ways. But underneath the humor is something deeper, more intense. Like the way his eyes go flat and predatory when another man flirts with her at the corner store. Or the way he growls, low and quiet, when he kisses her neck, just where her pulse beats loudest. "You're insatiable," she gasps one night as he presses her into the couch cushions. "For you," he breathes, voice rough with need. "Only ever for you." Dimitri isn't content to simply live in her space. He approaches her apartment's problems with systematic efficiency. He doesn't just fix the cabinet door, he reorganizes the entire kitchen for optimal workflow. "You don't have to do all this," Nell says. She's holding a screwdriver he handed her without explanation, standing on a chair to reach a light fixture. "It's inefficient to let problems accumulate," he says matter-of-factly. "Small issues become systemic failures." Soon, Dimitri's organizational skills extend beyond her apartment. He creates schedules for building maintenance, rotation charts for helping Mrs. Chen that somehow get implemented without anyone quite remembering agreeing to them. You have a way with people, Nell observes one evening as they climb the stairs. It's like you always know how to get them to do what you want. Dimitri stops so suddenly she nearly collides with him. Is that a bad thing? He asks, genuinely curious. No, she says, acutely aware of his fingers on her elbow. It's just unusual. Later, when they're tangled in bed, he kisses down her neck with barely restrained hunger. She feels his teeth graze her skin, sharper than they should be. Something in his voice is trembling. I shouldn't. Instead, he sinks his mouth into her skin and leaves bruises shaped like his hunger.
ベースフード栄養がしっかりでしかもチョコ感がたっぷりあるんです。毎日の朝ごはんにちょうどいいですね。食べ応えありますよね。腹持ちもするし、いや本当美味しいんです。ベースブレッドで検索。
One afternoon at their usual coffee shop, Nell excuses herself for the bathroom. When she returns, she finds a woman leaning against their table, talking to Dimitri with obvious interest. The surge of possessiveness that hits her is so powerful it stops her mid-step. The woman laughs at something Dimitri says, leaning closer, and Nell feels like she can't breathe. What right does she have to feel jealous when they're just roommates with benefits? But watching this stranger flirt with him, seeing the easy charm in Dimitri's polite responses, Nell realizes with startling clarity that she doesn't want to be just anything to him. She wants to be everything. The thought hits her like a freight train. She's in love with him. When did that happen? When did the mysterious man she'd rescued become the person she can't imagine living without? Her mind is reeling with the magnitude of her realization. She's in love with a man whose real name she doesn't even know. A man who might see her as nothing more than temporary shelter and convenient sex. You've been somewhere else since the coffee shop, Dimitri observes on the way home, his nostrils flaring slightly as if he's reading her mood through scent. I'm fine, just thinking. He studies her face for a long moment, then nods. Tell you what, let me cook tonight. You don't have to. I want to, he says firmly, cupping her face in his hands. Let me take care of you. His thumb brushes across her lips, and she finds herself leaning into the touch like she's drawn to him by some magnetic force. Okay, she whispers. He smiles, slow, sharp, full of promise. Good. I'll be back in an hour. She's still standing there, smiling to herself, when a harsh voice cuts through her thoughts. You should be ashamed of yourself. Nell spins around to see a well-dressed, middle-aged man striding toward her, his face twisted with disgust. His expensive suit and confident bearing scream money, but his expression is filled with rage. Excuse me? Nell says, taken aback. Being with that man, he says, his voice getting louder. Do you conveniently ignore all the lives he's ruined because he buys you nice things? I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Blake Storm, the man spits, CEO of Storm Industries. Nell's frowns in confusion. Don't play dumb with me. I saw you with him. Wait. Nell shakes her head. Are you talking about Dimitri? Dimitri? The man scoffs. You think I wouldn't recognize the man who forced me to sell my company, then gutted it, sold off the profitable parts, and threw away the rest? Hundreds of people lost their jobs because of him. I think you have the wrong person, Nell protests. He's homeless. He has amnesia. Amnesia? The man laughs harshly. The man's worth millions. He's probably working some elaborate scheme. Tax evasion, hiding assets, who knows what. Nell remembers Dimitri's wound, the poor condition he'd been living in, and above all, the lost looks he'd get whenever he tried to remember his past life. "You're wrong," she insists, but doubt is already creeping in. All those contradictions about Dimitri, his refined speech, his business knowledge, the way he commanded situations like he was used to being in charge. "I have to go," she whispers. "Look, kid," the man says, his anger fading into something like pity. "Maybe you truly didn't know, but now you do. If I were you, I'd keep away from this man." Chapter 8. Nell sits at a wooden table at the library, surrounded by stacks of old newspapers and magazines. She's been at it for 2 hours, combing through back issues of the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, and Business Week. Every search for Blake Storm brings up the same impossible truth. There he is on Forbes 40 Under 40. On a New York Times cover story, America's youngest billionaires, with a photo that makes her stomach twist. Dimitri in a sleek suit, standing in a glass-walled office high above Manhattan. Accompanied by photos of his sprawling estate in the Hamptons, his Manhattan penthouse, his fleet of luxury cars. Nell stares at the images, feeling smaller and more insignificant with each one. The man in these photos belongs to a world so far removed from her cramped one-bedroom apartment that they might as well be different species.
So I would recommend Wayfinder to customers when they require really accurate localization, but they don't have time to do the multi-sensor fusion and integration themselves.
The article describes his ruthless business acumen and aggressive acquisition strategies. Storm Industries is based in Manhattan, nearly 3,000 miles from Seattle. She buys the magazine and stumbles home. Dimitri is in the kitchen, wearing borrowed clothes, stirring a pot like he belongs there. The sight guts her. Him, barefoot in her kitchen, playing house like it's real. Like any of this is real. Nell throws the magazine at him. It hits his chest and falls to the floor, pages splaying open to reveal his face staring up from the glossy cover. The silence that follows is deafening. Dimitri stares down at the magazine, and Nell sees the exact moment recognition flickers across his features. "Have you been lying to me?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this all some kind of joke?" "No," he protests immediately, shaking his head. "Nell, Blake Storm," she reads from the cover. "Net worth $2.8 billion, CEO of Storm Industries. That's you, isn't it?" Dimitri's mouth opens and closes like he can't find the words. I don't remember any of that," he ends up whispering. "A man came up to me today," Nell continues. "He knew you. He said you destroyed his company." "That's not..." Dimitri looks up from the magazine. "I would never..." "Look at yourself," Nell says, gesturing to the open pages. "Look at that house, that office. You could buy my entire building with pocket change." The photographs mock her with their opulence. She thinks of her own reflection in the bathroom mirror this morning. Tired eyes, secondhand clothes. "I don't remember being that person," he insists, desperation in his voice. "It doesn't matter," Nell says, turning away from him because looking at his face hurts too much. She feels like she's losing him, like he's already slipping away into that glittering world where she could never follow. "Now that you know who you are, you can go home," she murmurs. "Nell, you're not going to stay here now, are you?" She flips to the photo spread of his Hamptons estate. "Look at this. You could be living in a mansion instead." "Come on." Dimitri's voice becomes strained. "We don't even know if that's really me. Could be a look-alike." Nell shakes her head and moves past him toward the kitchen. Let's have dinner then, shall we? Oh, wait. Why would you have dinner here when you could be dining at some Michelin-starred restaurant within the hour, Blake? That name means nothing to me. He snaps. That man said you were lying, Nell continues. That you're probably evading taxes or hiding assets. And you believed him? Dimitri's voice cracks. Just like that? Some stranger on the street? The pain in his voice makes her want to take it all back, to apologize and pretend none of this ever happened. But she can't. The photographs are right there, proof of a life so far beyond her reach it might as well be fantasy. No, Nell says, her voice small and broken. I know you didn't lie about the amnesia, but the truth is it doesn't matter. It's over. This... She waves between them. Can't go on anymore. And why not? Dimitri challenges, tone quiet. Because why would it? Why would you choose this? She gestures around her tiny apartment. When you could have that. She holds up the photo of his estate, the image blurring through her tears. Because you're not in there, Dimitri whispers, pointing at the pictures. You're here. They stare at each other across the small space, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging between them. Nell's heart cracks a little more with each passing second. Look, you should go, she says finally. Call your company or something. I don't want to. Yeah, well, I want you to. You're in my home. Dimitri's eyes flash gold, actually flash like light reflecting off metal. You want me to leave? He asks. Nell doesn't reply. Can't trust her voice. She's afraid if she speaks, she'll take it all back, beg him to stay. Nell? His voice is rougher now, with an edge she's never heard before. It's almost a growl. Yes, she whispers, the word tearing something vital inside her chest. I want you to leave.
Oh,
Dimitri looks like he might argue, shoulder tense with tension, and then he winces. His face contorting in pain, and suddenly he stumbles, one hand going to his chest, like something inside is trying to claw its way out. What's wrong? Nell asks, alarm cutting through her anger. He doesn't reply, just makes a sound that's part gasp, part moan. His breathing becomes labored and sweat beads on his forehead despite the cool evening air. Dimitri? Fear replaces her anger as she watches him struggle. What's wrong? He crouches down, his whole body trembling. His hands are clenched into fists. Dimitri? Nell's voice comes out as a whisper, terror replacing every other emotion. He makes a sound that's part grunt, part growl, and then his bones begin to crack and stretch audibly. Dark fur sprouts across his skin as his clothes tear and fall away in tatters. His hands become claws, his teeth become fangs, and his spine curves and extends until where Dimitri had been crouching, there's now a massive wolf with glowing amber eyes. Nell screams, the sound ripping from her throat involuntarily. The wolf, Dimitri, looks at her with those familiar eyes for one heartbreaking moment. Then he turns and leaps through her window, shattering the glass as he disappears into the night. Chapter 9. Nell stands frozen in her wrecked apartment, surrounded by shattered glass and torn fabric, staring at the broken window where Dimitri disappeared. The silence after the chaos is deafening. First, gentle, mysterious Dimitri is actually a ruthless billionaire CEO. And now, he turned into a wolf right in front of her. I'm losing my mind, she whispers, running her hands through her hair. I'm actually losing my mind. She sees his face again right before the shift, the confusion, the pain, and afterward, the way the wolf had looked at her with such heartbreak. she replays it again and again. The soft whine when she screamed. The way he flinched like her fear physically hurt him. And now he's alone out there, she says. The thought jolts her. Dimitri, Blake, whoever he is, had been confused and scared, and she sent him away. The guilt hits hard. Shit, she breathes, grabbing her jacket. She has to find him. Explain. Something. She can't leave it like this. Not when she's in love with him. Not after the way he looked at her. The streets are eerily quiet for early evening. Nell hurries toward the area where she first found him, scanning every alley, every shadow. Dimitri, she calls softly, not wanting to draw attention but desperate for him to hear. Dimitri, please. She's halfway down the block when hands grab her from behind. What? She starts to scream, but a rough hand clamps over her mouth. She's yanked into the narrow space between two buildings. Her heart pounds as she struggles, biting the hand, kicking wildly. But there are at least 2 men, maybe 3, and they're stronger. Morrison, someone says behind her. Is that her? Through the panic, she sees the man who'd recognized Dimitri earlier step from the shadows. Yes, he says, eyeing her with something close to pity. One of the men shoves a wad of cash into Morrison's hand. Payment as agreed. Nell's eyes widen. She thrashes harder, tries to scream, but someone presses a cloth over her nose and mouth. The chemical stench makes her gag. Don't worry, Morrison says, his voice fading as the drug takes hold. They won't hurt you. They just need bait to draw out Blake. Chapter 10. Nell wakes to a pounding head and the bitter taste of chemicals in her mouth. She's zip-tied to a metal chair in an abandoned warehouse, the air thick with rust and rot. Yellow streetlight filters in through broken windows high above. 3 men circle her like predators, big, muscular, too still. Something about their movements reminds her of Dimitri. She's awake, one says. Good. Another crouches to her eye level. Now we wait for the alpha to come running. The leader pulls a knife, testing its edge on his thumb. Either way, she's done her job. Morrison said to make sure Blake suffers, didn't he? Terror grips her as the blade comes closer. Please, don't worry, sweetheart. We'll make it quick. Then comes the growl. Low, primal, inhuman. It vibrates through the floor and up her spine. The men freeze. I thought you said he didn't shift anymore, one whispers. Shut up, get ready. From the shadows, a massive wolf steps into the light, bigger than before. Dark fur like smoke. Amber eyes locked on the knife near her throat. Well, the leader sneers, not lowering the blade. Look what crawled out of the gutter. The wolf steps forward. The men move, surrounding her. You remember how this works, don't you? One more step and she dies. Dimitri stops, eyes locked on the blade. 3 shifters, 1 human shield. Here's what you're going to do. You shift back, slow, then we talk payback. Nell sees the tension in his body, rage fighting restraint. Dimitri, don't... The man backhands her. Her head snaps sideways. Shut up. That's when Dimitri snaps. He lunges, not at the leader, but the man to his left. The element of surprise gives him the edge. Teeth clamp down, blood sprays, chaos erupts. The leader turns, knife forgotten for a breath. It's enough. Dimitri releases his first target and pivots toward Nell. The 3rd shifter starts to shift, but Dimitri barrels through him like nothing, focused only on her. The leader lifts the blade, but Dimitri slams into him. They crash into crates, the knife clattering away. All three men shift now, bones cracking, bodies stretching. But they're smaller. Dimitri fights like something possessed, wild and precise. They come at him in tandem, snapping at his legs, trying to bring him down. The floor runs with blood. Some his, most theirs. One by one they falter, limping, beaten. Only the leader remains. He snarls, backing toward the window. He vanishes into the dark. Dimitri sways, blood mats his fur. He takes one step toward Nell and collapses. Dimitri! Nell breaks free from the damaged restraints and drops to her knees. His form begins to shift. Moments later, he lies naked and bleeding on the concrete, pale, still. Dimitri, she whispers, cradling his head. Her hands press uselessly against the worst of the wounds. Wake up. His eyes flutter open, unfocused. He looks at her, dazed. Nell, what happened to me? I remember being angry and then... You didn't know? She asks, stunned. About the wolf thing. You really didn't know. He groans, trying to sit, then collapses again. Those men, they knew me. They said, "You're bleeding too much." Nell interrupts. "I need to get you help." Nell, he whispers, his hand finding hers. What if they're right? What if I really am a monster? No, she says fiercely. The man I know is good. He's kind. You just risked everything to save me. Her voice cracks. I love you, Dimitri. Whoever you were, whatever your name is. His eyes widen slightly at her confession, but before he can respond, they roll back and he goes limp in her arms. Help! Nell screams into the empty warehouse. Somebody help us! That's when she hears the sound of expensive cars pulling up outside, followed by rapid footsteps. He's here! A voice calls out. 3 figures in tailored suits burst through the warehouse entrance, moving with the same predatory grace as the men who'd attacked them. But these newcomers scan the space with professional efficiency, their eyes immediately locking onto Nell. Alpha, the largest of the 3, a man with silver hair and cold blue eyes, rushes forward, dropping to his knees beside them. Blake, can you hear me? Please help us, Nell gasps. He's bleeding out. We need to get him to a hospital. Hospital? The woman in the group, blonde and sharp-featured, sneers at Nell. What for? What do you mean, what for? Nell asks. He's dying. The Alpha doesn't need your human hospital. The third man, younger, with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase clutched in his hands, says dismissively. Nell tries to reach for Dimitri again, calling his name, but the silver-haired man moves her aside. Though, the one with the briefcase continues, maybe we could accelerate the process a bit. If he could make it to tonight's board meeting, that would save us considerable time. The shareholders are getting restless. These people are crazy, Nell mutters, but then the woman produces a syringe from her jacket and plunges it directly into Dimitri's chest. No! Nell yelps. But suddenly Dimitri gasps and sits upright, his eyes snapping open with startling clarity. The 3 newcomers immediately incline their heads in perfect synchronization. Alpha, they say in unison. Welcome back, the one with the briefcase says, pulling out documents. If I could just get your signature on this merger agreement really quickly. For crying out loud, Nell explodes. He's wounded. Leave him alone. But Dimitri blinks, takes a quick look at the document, and his entire demeanor shifts. What the fuck, Malcolm? He snarls, ripping the papers to shreds. This contract's absolute shit. What did I tell you about doing business with the Fords Group? You've got to hold them by the balls, otherwise they'll bleed you dry. Malcolm blinks back what might be tears of relief. Oh, thank God you're back, Alpha. We've been so lost without you. You're an incompetent git, Malcolm. Dimitri continues coldly. But sir, where have you been? What happened? We've been searching for months. None of your business. Dimitri cuts him off with icy precision. Isn't it your job to know these things beforehand, not ask stupid questions afterward? The woman sniffs delicately. Alpha, now that you've dealt with those three, what should we do? Do we retaliate? Make an example? We need to send a message. The silver-haired man agrees. Show the other packs what happens when they target us. Nell feels like she's watching strangers, and she is.